Talking all things LSU Tigers, the Bayou Bengals. An up and down season, maybe somewhat of a disappointing season in year two of Brian Kelly, but the LSU Tigers get ready for the ReliaQuest Bowl against the Wisconsin Badgers. New Year's Day, noon kickoff. We're going to talk that, the 2023 season. We got our good friend Blake Ruffino of AYS Sports, dare I say, the best in the business when it comes to talking all things LSU. What's going on, my man? And you know what? I always get excited because it's always an electric conversation. I always love popping into like your post-game shows or, Ruffino and Joe, whatever it is. Like it's an electric factory, man. So kudos to you. Congratulations on a great season. The content was fantastic. And again, pleasure to be doing this with you, man. How you been?
Doing good. It's funny, Chris. I feel like we were just doing this like 2 weeks ago when we were doing the preseason stuff and I got animated. And then I said, I thought Florida State scared me more than Alabama. And then I had Alabama fans that don't have teeth, by the way, that were in my mentions on X or Twitter or whatever it's called. And now it's funny because Alabama snubs them to get into the playoff, and then now we're all just full circle here. But I'm glad to be here, man. I appreciate it. I watch your post-game shows too. Dude, I tried to call in one time and I was like, he's denying my calls. But then I realized there's so many people calling in. I was going to call and be like, hey, hot damn Shane Beamer, but didn't get the chance to get in. But look, man, it's been a fun season. It's not technically over, but big weekend this weekend. Jaden Daniels potentially going to win the Heisman. So a lot of big things happening around the Bayou.
And I think thanks to you, Blake, I was maybe on the fence going into SEC media days of who was I going to pick, right? LSU, Alabama, doing my research. I liked what I saw from LSU on paper, but you, I think, really pushed me over the edge, and I have to give you credit, my friend, because I had to go eat crow after the SEC championship game, and Bama fans ate it up, man. Over 20,000 views on that YouTube video. So really, I have you to thank, because if it wasn't for you, I don't think I would have been so enthusiastic about the demise of Nick Saban and Alabama football and dancing on his grave and picking them to go 9-3. So I think I have you to thank for that. So we all had to eat some crow. We should have never doubted Lord Saban. I hate to say that. I know that pains you to say, but
oh, dude,
it's
funny. I don't remember that conversation. I'm just joking. Yeah, I mean, look, man, he, like you said, he made us eat crow, and we never should have. I mean, Chris, it's still arguably of teams that Saban had in the postseason, either playoff or BCS, you still can make the argument it's not the best team that he's ever had. It could still be the worst team. I think, look, LSU fans are going to hate me for this. I think Nick Saban should be the coach of the year because of how he got his team. Chris, they won against South Florida 17-3. Okay. They had a last-second heroic situation happen against Auburn, and then the next week they go and beat down the door and take on Georgia and beat them by 3. I mean, look, it's who they are. It's how they've always won games. But look, since week 6, Chris, at least on Ruffino and Joe show, my co-host Joe DeLeon was like, "Oh, they're not that good. They're not that good." And I'm like, man, I've seen this story before. This man literally made me become a fan of LSU when he came here in 1999, right? And from, especially as the great rap song would say, from the 99 to the 2000s, all right? So the bottom line is I've seen Saban do it. And then week 6, after the Ole Miss game, after they get they had a punt blocked. They got the ball at the 1, and they still managed to not be able to score, and they won the football game. I'm like, look, man, this is Saban. This is just Saban. And look, Chris, we're going to do our thing on Sunday, our next show for Ruffino and Joe show. I'm picking them to win the national title. And look, man, I know that Washington's really good. I know that Texas is really good, and so is Michigan. But there's one area that all these other 3 teams not named Bama have a massive struggle in. Washington, 120th in the country in passing yards allowed. Texas is 96. Michigan, okay, what's up with their passing game in general? Good luck giving Nick a month to try to game plan against you. And here's the truth. Saban's not going to lose a rematch against Sark if he gets in there. So I eat crow just like you do. Okay. I should have never done it. My grandmother told me one thing in life: never bet on never bet against Nick Saban. And here she is right here. And I shouldn't have done it, right here in the studio. Meemaw, I'm sorry, but he's going to make us eat crow even more, man. It's an impressive job by him. And I hate saying it as a LSU fan.
Saban with a extra amount of time to get ready, as you mentioned. Tread lightly when it comes to betting against Alabama. And Michigan favored in that game. Vegas is playing with fire. Absolutely. Let's get into LSU, Blake. Obviously, the 2023 season, Tigers go 9-3, 6-2 in the SEC. You talked over the summer, right? The last time that we spoke on LSU, that FSU game was the tone setter and how big that game was. And I mean, hey, Florida State turned out to be pretty damn good. Yep. And LSU went toe-to-toe with them for a while. 45-24 was the final score in that one. I feel like that first game, though, Blake, that was sort of a tell of what was to come on the defensive side, right? Because it was a historically bad year for LSU defensively. I mean, you lose in Oxford 55-49. It's solely on the defense. You look at the Alabama game, 42-28. Blake, talk about that defense. I mean, was there anything that it feels like looking at LSU, like that was the only thing that really held them back from a really special season?
Well, Chris, they're the number one team in the country in total offense. I mean, led by Jaden Daniels. And look, there have been games, okay, like even in 19, like we talk about the Joe Burrow and the LSU team from 19. They had a game against Auburn where they won 23-20. You're going to have games where the offense may be able to put up some yards, but for whatever reason can't get in the end zone. That's what happened to LSU in week 1 against Florida State. But, Chris, here's one thing. I said this last night on my show, okay? You can get away with your secondary being just complete cheeks, all right? You're literally looking at two playoff teams. One's 120th in the country in pass defense. One's 96. What you cannot do is that your front seven be just absolutely abysmal. Because, Chris, 317 yards Ole Miss had rushing against LSU. Quinshon Judkins, remember in the beginning of the season, Chris, when everybody's like, oh, man, Quinshon Judkins, he ain't good no more. And I'm like, he going to be good against LSU. Okay, so there was a prop bet that was out there for him to have 175 rushing yards. Chris, I put $200 on the over, okay, because I knew this defense was absolute cheeks. You score 49 points and you win and you lose, and then the weeks after that, you play Missouri and you still got to score 40+. They can't get a stop. They're not playing Harold Perkins in the right position. So they got so many different things that they have to figure out on defense because, of course, their offense is here, right? Like, Brian Kelly has never had the amount of weapons in his entire life at Notre Dame, Cincinnati, wherever. He's never had weapons like this. Malik Neighbors has caught over 160 passes plus. I think it's actually 175 or somewhere like that in 2 years for Brian Kelly. That's career 4-year stats for dudes at Notre Dame when he was there. He doesn't have dudes like that. They have 2 All-Americans along the offensive line. Malik Neighbors, Jaden Daniels, first-team All-Americans. But when you're that bad in the front seven, you're not going to win in this league. You're just not going to win in this league, right? And so when you're not able to stop the run, teams like Alabama, who's getting back to good defense running the football, you play a team like Florida. Look, I don't care what anybody says. I know ATN went in the portal today, but Billy wants to run the football. Newsflash, they ran it all over our ass, and Billy Napier went 5-7. Okay, they weren't that good. So look, man, I hate that this happened, but look, they missed in the portal. You want to talk about a team that, look, portal additions helped a team, right? Like you could look at Oklahoma as an example. Portal additions helped them. Portal additions helped LSU a year ago. Man, did LSU miss this past year on defense, mainly due to the guys that the defensive coordinator Matt House wanted. So bye-bye, see ya, because they ain't gonna happen here. I don't care what happens. Bye-bye, see ya.
That was going to be, Blake, my next question is, I mean, what was it? Because, from the outside looking in, to your point, and we talked about this off air, there's certain things at each program that historically you're good at, or there's just things that won't be tolerated. at LSU, that type of defensive performance, it will not be tolerated.
Will
and
not.
So it's hard for me to wrap my brain around when you talk about Harold Perkins and some of the great other defensive guys, some of the other great talents in the front seven. Like, how did that happen? Was it House's scheme was that bad? Was it guys underachieved? I mean, what you talked about misses in the portal, but like, it's hard to fathom because we just know LSU's stockpiled with talent. Like, how could they be that bad?
Well, so you have to go back to Orgeron, okay? And when Brian Kelly got in here. So, Chris, when Brian Kelly got into the building at LSU, he had 36 scholarship players, okay? They just didn't have the depth. So then they go out to the portal the year that they win the SEC West, and they get nothing but dudes from the state of Louisiana, from the transfer portal. All of them are seniors. So they're experienced. They know how to play, got talent. The DB room has dudes that are in the NFL right now. But you didn't give Brian Kelly the time on defense with the personnel to kind of build, right, and build that depth back up. But you mentioned something about things that won't be tolerated. It's not now that they don't have the depth. They had the number of depth. They don't have quality depth. And they missed on some guys that Orgeron missed on and recruiting. They were star chasing is at least what I call it. Oh, this guy's a 5-star. Well, he might look like a 5-star and he might look like Tarzan, but he plays like Jane, okay? He's not any good. And so when you look at Chris, their biggest issue, okay, because their secondary, they had 2 safeties at boundary corner. They were so beat up. So it's a mixture of a lot of things. Personnel, it's injuries, but the number one thing, Chris, I know that you watched the LSU Alabama game. Do we need to call Tom Cruise and Mission Impossible to get a spy on Jalen Milroe? What do we have to do to get a spy on Jalen Milroe? Oh, wait, Alabama did it, and he ran for 29. Georgia did it. He runs for 29 yards. While there is a kryptonite to Jalen Milroe, his name is Harold Perkins. So you look at scheme as, at least to me, being the number one thing. They're playing old school gap scheme football. You can't do that anymore, man. These dudes will eat you alive. And then I think it's, obviously some personnel. And look, your fans and people that know South Carolina will know this too. Jimmy Lindsey going down was a big deal, okay? Because you're shuffling at the defensive line. You don't have anybody that's ever coached that position before. You can't go to somebody else and hire somebody, okay, in good faith and say, hey, we're going to go to, Kentucky and get somebody, the D-line coach at Kentucky. You're not going to do that to Stoops, even though, never mind. I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to be quiet about Stoopsy, but nevertheless, it wouldn't be in good faith. So I say all that to say, like, even Jimmy Lindsey going down, Chris, I thought was a pretty massive deal too.
So, Blake, my next question is, has Matt House been fired? And if not, why? Because, fans right now are impatient. I've seen it in Columbia. It's, okay, season's over. They're all looking at their watch like, we're burning valuable daylight here with this guy in this spot.
Yeah, so I don't think.
Is there any way he comes back? Is there any way he comes back?
Well, yes, they demote him, right? Like they demote him to.
So you don't see any way that we get to 2024 and he's still the defensive coordinator. There's no way that happens.
I'm not going to say that. I think that they could elevate Bob Diaco and them being co-DCs. But look, man, Chris, you're a man, I'm a man. Sometimes pride and ego's got to come into this, and you got to say, listen, if you're going to demote me and bring somebody else up, I got to hit the road. I'm not going to say that there's absolutely no chance that he is not on this coaching staff in 2024. What I will say is, if he is, boy, look, you think A&M spent a lot of money? The Bayou, and look, Louisiana is not a rich state. They will find way. They will do what they got to do. Look, there's a reason guys like Paul Skeens get here from the transfer portal, right? There's a reason Burrow and Daniels and Angel Reese, they get here. LSU will spend money. I don't think for my sanity or the sanity. And look, Chris, it'd be one thing if he was just bad at calling defenses. I think that he's not reaching these players either. So when you're not good in that locker room and you're not good on the field, hit the road, Jack, and don't come back no more, like the old song used to say. So I'm not going to say there's no way, but if he is, I think it would be a very bad move. They have not fired him yet. He's still out recruiting. But Brian Kelly said this week, look, we can't play defense like this. And he made the joke that, hey, man, I was 3 games into a season when you're at Notre Dame and fired a guy that was in my wedding. Well, this guy wasn't in your wedding, so you need to fire his ass. That's all I got to say on. Man, we're going to get in so much trouble. I'm going to get so much trouble.
I love it. Blake, Jaden Daniels, I think absolutely should be the Heisman winner. What's it been like watching him this season, and how excited are you to watch him hoist that trophy on Saturday?
Very excited. You know why, Chris? Because it's one thing, all right, when you're in there, okay, and you see a guy, all right, that in 2022 took a lot of criticism from fans. Like, they wanted him benched. Uh-oh. Can you see me?
You are frozen, my friend.
Okay, hold on. I'm sorry.
It's the Matt House hackers.
Probably
infiltrating your feed right now.
That piece of shit. All right, can you see me
there
now?
All right, we got you. Yeah, we'll cut that out.
Okay, sorry about that. I don't know what happened. I just saw that I wasn't there. What was the question? Oh, Jaden Daniels.
Jaden Daniels, yeah.
Yeah. So look, Chris, in 2022, Jaden took a lot of criticism by the fan base, by boosters, by a lot of people, and some of it rightfully so, some of it because, and look, I'm not a political dude. Some of it had to do with LSU has never had a minority quarterback. Okay. And I think that he had to overcome some things. Okay. There were some like Rohan Davey, Jamarcus Russell, but not to this level, like not to where social media was prevalent and you could get on it. Like Rohan Davey, Jamarcus Russell never saw this stuff like on social media. So they wanted him pulled. And some of the play dictated that. But people need to understand, like Spencer Rattler when he was at Oklahoma, sometimes you got to let dudes progress, right? Like you got to let dudes play and get better. But we've seen this before in Baton Rouge. Joe sucked, okay, the first couple games that he was here. He sucked, all right? He was under 50% completion percentage. He couldn't hit the broad side of a barn if his life depended on it. But then all of a sudden, something clicked for him, all right? Something clicked for Jaden Daniels this season, and he went off. Him throwing the football, Chris, I think is a big thing, right? The thing that changes everything with him is how he can take off with his legs. Look what he did against Bama. We talked about Saban earlier. Did you know that no player ever that's went up against Nick Saban has had 300 yards and a half besides Jaden Daniels? Nobody. Not Cam Newton, not Tim Tebow, not Johnny Manziel, not Joe Burrow, right? Like there's been a lot of dudes that have tried and didn't do what he did. To me, man, I know I sound biased in saying this. I just think he's a clear-cut Heisman winner, right? Like, and people say Michael Penix. Well, Michael Penix against Arizona State threw 42 times for like 147 yards and 2 interceptions and no touchdowns. So if you want to talk about Michael Penix, you can come to AYS Sports and we can have that debate because that's a Rudy Poo take. You don't – come on, man. Like this dude's worst game was 2 touchdowns. The worst game that he had. Oh, and by the way, in that game, he had 474 yards. So, again, you're talking about him doing it in the SEC too, instead of the conference that doesn't even want to be alive anymore. Look, I'm sticking up for my guy here, but I mean, it's just the truth, Chris. I mean, they don't. He's the second best player in LSU football's history, right? The second best. And I never thought in my lifetime, as I have a Joe Burrow memorial thing right here in the studio with a signed jersey, I never thought that Jesus Burrow would ever be touched again. Like I didn't think he was going to get touched again. But now I got to do the other wall and put Jaden Daniels' pretty mug on this thing. So I got Skeens, I got Burrow, and now I got to go Jaden Daniels. So I don't know, Chris. I know I'm ranting, but it's just the
You're
truth.
good. The 1,100 plus rushing yards is what really it's. And I think I read a stat. Jaden Daniels averaged a first down every time he touched the football. So I mean, just think about that. How prolific he was and is, and that brings us, Blake, to bowl season. LSU takes on Wisconsin. I'll ask you this because I look at this matchup on paper, and I know it's, you and I had a conversation of the season. Hey, you're playing Army. Like, you feel like the defense should have a bounce back game. You're worried at all. You said, I'd be worried if they were going up against toddlers. So Wisconsin, Wisconsin, man, you look at these numbers. LSU scoring 46 points per game. Wisconsin scoring 22.8. And we know what Wisconsin is. Big, physical, wants to run the football. Luke Fickell coach team. I just don't see how the Badgers can keep up with LSU in this one. But I guess the question is Jaden Daniels going to play? Who's going to be available? I mean, that's what a lot of these bowl games are, is like, what version of these teams are we getting? And also, I'll ask you this, Blake, what's the excitement level from the LSU fan base for this game? Because obviously a 9-win season in Columbia or Fayetteville, it ain't viewed the same as it is in Baton Rouge when you had aspirations of winning a national title. So overall thoughts, preview, prediction, if you like, on this ReliaQuest Bowl, which should be called the Outback Bowl, by the way.
Right. And it should, because I love Outback and I love the blooming onion. My fat butt loves a blooming onion. I've told this, and I've come pretty close to Jaden Daniels camp. I've made my peace with and saying to the fans, saying to them, I'll tell anybody that listens, Jesus Christ Almighty can come down from the heavens, and I'll tell him too, don't play. It's not worth it, right? Like, and Brian Kelly was the head coach when Jalen Smith, I think it was Jalen Smith, the linebacker, remember he blew out his knee, was like a consensus top 5 pick. Why? Now, the only way, Chris, is that Malik Neighbors, the receiver, is 22 yards away from breaking the all-time LSU receiving record. Now, that's with that's with Chase, Jefferson, Odell, Jarvis, all the elite receivers that have come through here. I think that the only way that happens is that he plays a drive and he throws the ball 5 times to Malik Neighbors, or however many times it takes to get him 22 yards. They break the record. They run off the field. They take their pads off. I still wouldn't risk it. Like, if it were a New Year's Six bowl, I could say, well, you know what? Okay. Like, this is a big time bowl game. All right. Yeah, you can play in it. But like, you saw Matt Corral a couple years ago too. Like, he dislocated his ankle. It's not worth it, Chris. It's like, does it bother me that it's not worth it? Because I want to see great football games. Yes. But this dude's going to get potentially $20 million in less than 4 months. Why would he even remotely come close to risking that? So, no, I don't. But in reference to the game, I don't like it personally, because I think that, like I said last time, I literally think that you could go to any school in the country. I think a high school team could score a touchdown on this defense, right? Like, I mean, they've shown me nothing that would tell me that they're worth a shit, And so what are you going to do when your back's up against the wall? You haven't responded at all year long, but it's a good I feel like this game resembles Florida, right? Like a team that just kind of wants to not really spread you out, but they kind of want to run the football because they have to. I think Braylon Allen leads them in rushing like close to 1,000 yards, but has double-digit touchdowns. They can't really throw the ball around. And so, look, we saw a third-string quarterback at Texas A&M. Chris, there was a time in that game that he was 9 for 9 on third downs for 137 yards and 2 touchdowns. So you mean to tell me that any quarterback there's probably 1,000 quarterbacks in the portal. Every one of them could throw a touchdown on LSU right now. And so I don't have any faith in what they can do defensively. And because of the fact that you don't have Jaden Daniels, I have no idea what's going to happen here. None. Like, if somebody said, Blake, you gotta pick this game. Nope, no way. Because I saw Garrett Nussmeier throw for 300 yards and a half against Georgia in the SEC championship game. I also saw him throw 2 picks, one of them being a pick 6 against G5 HBCU Southern. Like, bro, he's the most bipolar quarterback that you're ever going to find on the face of the planet, because he's going to go out there and just absolutely rake against Georgia, but then throw 2 picks against a G5 team, right? And so Luke Fickell's going to throw something at Lil Nuss, but it's good to see. It's going to be good to see the future without Jaden Daniels too.
There you have it, folks. Blake Ruffino, AYS Sports. Blake, you're a legend. It's always a pleasure, my man. Let's definitely do it again soon.